Hi friends, welcome to Azure Content. This is part 17 in Azure Data Factory Real-Time Scenarios playlist. In this video, we are going to learn how to expand range of integers using Azure Data Factory pipelines. So let's see our requirement in details. So as you can see in the image, this is our use case. The first image is how our input dataset looks like. So we have a CSV file where we have two columns. First one is order ID and second one is order units. So order ID is the identity column which contains the incremental records corresponding to each of the rows. But if you see order units, so this column contains the range of integers which is currently in the collapsed form. As you can see, 1.10, which means it contains the range of integers from 1 to 10, but in this input dataset we have it in the collapsed form. Okay. Similarly, in second row you can see 2400 to 2499. Similarly, 101 to 500, then 12,000 to 12,999. So this is the range of integers. In the output dataset, what we want is we want to expand all of these collapsed integers. So in the input, if we have 1 to 10, then it should have 10 rows corresponding to this column. Okay. So order ID will be same for all these 10 integers, and order units will be expanded from 1 to 10 in series in an incremental manner. Similarly, for this second row of input, from 2400 to 2499, this range will be expanded for unit order ID 2. Okay, so it will have 100 records starting from 2400 to 2499, as you can see in the picture. Similarly, for third row, the series should be expanded from 101 till 500. Okay, so you can see order ID is 3 starting here and it ends here in the next image, and the number goes till 500 as is mentioned in the end range. Okay. Similarly, for the fourth row, the starting range is 12,000. So for order ID 4, the number starts with 12,000 and it goes up till 12,999, which means it has 1,000 records corresponding to this single row. So this is what I want to achieve in this video. So let's go to ADF portal and let's start creating the pipeline. Okay, so first of all, let me show you this file. So this file is in my ADLS input container within my storage account in ADLS Gen 2. Okay, so the file name is expandrange.csv, which contains these two columns. Okay, if you see in the preview form, you can see order ID and order units are there, and in order units, all these numbers are in collapsed format. Okay, so we have to expand it. So let me create a pipeline in Azure Data Factory workspace. So this is a new pipeline I'm going to create. So first of all, let me have a lookup activity to fetch the records present in this input file. Okay, so here in the settings, we need to create the new dataset. So let me create a dataset pointing to ADLS Gen 2, and it will have CSV format because the file is in .csv format. Okay, so let me select the existing linked service, and in the file path, let me navigate to the file that is expandrange.csv. Okay, so our first row is header, as you can see. So let me select this checkbox and let me import schema from connection and let me click on OK. So our source dataset is ready. Let me preview the data. Okay, so here only one row is visible because here the first row only option is checked. So let me uncheck it and let me preview the data again. So now you can see it is clearly visible that we have 4 records. So we are good with this. So this lookup will give us the content present in this CSV file. So before moving ahead, let me run this pipeline and let me show you the output that this lookup will give. So let's wait for the pipeline execution. Yeah, so the lookup has been succeeded, and if I see the output, so you can see here that it has a value array which contains all these JSON, okay, which is basically the rows present in the file, which is coming in the form of JSON. So what I want is I want to have a variable, okay, that will store each of these row values in the expanded format. So that variable will be of array kind and it will hold all these expanded integers in the variable. Okay, so we will have this kind of values for first iteration, and similarly for each of the iterations the value of that variable will change and it will store the values corresponding to this range. Okay, so basically I want to expand this using some function. We will talk about it in few minutes. So basically our next step is to create a variable that will be an array variable which will hold this kind of expanded integer values. Okay, so let me close this. Okay, so let me create a variable now. So let me term it as array of integers. Okay, and as I said, the type or data type of this variable will be array. So I'm giving this as array, and we want to loop through the output of this lookup activity. For that, we will use for each activity. Okay, so let me combine these two activities, and in the items of this for each activity, we will have to pass the value array, that is activity lookup dot output dot value. Why? Because value is the array which is holding all the content or all the rows of the CSV file. Okay, so we are pointing to this value array for iterating inside this for each activity. Okay, so let me go inside this for each, and now what we will do is we will use set variable activity so that we can modify the value of this variable. Okay, so each time we have to expand the range of the order units, right? So in the function, let me search if we have something called range. So you can see we have a range function. What it does is it generates an array of integers starting from a certain number, and we have to define the length in the parameter. So in the example, you can see if we provide range of 3, 4, then it will expand the integers and give us the output as array of 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so let me go to input file. So here what we currently have is 1 dot dot 10. Okay, so if we have to provide range of this value, then what we can do is we have to provide range of first integer will be 1. And how will we determine the length of this array? What we can do is we have to subtract 10 from 1, which will give us 9 as the integer. Then we have to add 1 so that it will give total 10 integers. Okay, so what I mean by that is, suppose I have provided 1, 3 in range values. Okay, so what output I will get is 1, 2 and 3, right? Because we have given 3 as the length. So how will we dynamically get this? We have to provide 1 in the first value, but I don't want to provide 3 as a hard-coded value, as we do not know if it is 10 integers that we want, or 100 integers, or 1000 integers, right? So we cannot give 1, 10 as a hard-coded value in the range. So how will we fetch this? The second parameter is, so we have to subtract first parameter from second parameter, and then we have to add 1. So the second parameter we can get by 3 minus 1, which is 2, and then plus 1, which is 3 again. Okay, so this is how we will get it. So similarly, if we want to get the range of this one, which is the second row, so if we have to expand this, then we will provide range of, this will be the first parameter. Okay, so range of 2400, and then comma, then we have to provide 2499 minus 2400, then plus 1. Okay, why I'm doing plus 1 is so that we can get 100 integers. So I hope you understood why we are doing plus 1 after subtracting the start range and end range. Okay, so let me go back. So here I'll make use of this range function, and as we discussed, the first parameter of this range function will be nothing but the first integer present in order units. Okay, so how can we get the first integer out of the whole range is that we can use something called split function. Okay, so let me go to functions and let me search for split function. So what it does is it will split the string using a separator. Okay, so here in our case, our separator is double dots. Okay, so if we give split uh, order units and then the separator will be double dots, then it will return us the array of string. So suppose if we provide split of 1 double dot 10 by separating it with this delimiter, that is double dot, then it will result in this array which will split this basically with this separator. So the first value will be 1 and the second value in this array will be 10. Okay, so this is what split function will do. Similarly for other rows as well, it will give us this value. Okay, so this is how it will split the numbers based on this separator. Okay, so let me use split function within this range. Okay, so let me write down split of. So here we will use order unit. That means item dot order units. So let me check order units, and we will split this by separated by double dots. Okay, so once this is splitted, so it will give us this array as we discussed. So to fetch the first item of array, we have to provide split of item dot order units, comma separated by this double dots. Then in order to fetch this value, we have to provide index of 0, and in order to fetch the second value, we have to provide index of 1. Okay, then we will get this second value of this array. Okay, so let me do this. So first parameter of this range function, as we discussed, will hold this first integer. Okay, so we will split this based on this separator, and then we will use index of 0. Okay, as we discussed. So now we have to provide the second parameter to this range function. So as we discussed, we have to dynamically get the second parameter, as we have to specify, suppose, range of, for the first row we have to provide range of 1 comma 10. For the second row we have to provide range of 2400 comma 100, right? 100, because we want all the integers starting from 2400 ending to 2499. That means we need 100 integers starting from 2400. Okay, similarly for this third row we have to get the range starting from 101 till 500, which means we have to get 400 records for this row. Okay, similarly for this value we have to give the range starting from 12,000 and it will have 1000 records. So this is the length we have to specify. So the first parameter of this range we have already taken from the split value. We have taken the first item of array out of the split value of this order unit. Okay, but we need to get this second parameter. So what we can do is, so we have to subtract the first value from the second value, and then we have to add +1, which means 10 minus 1 is 9, and then +1 is 10. Similarly, 2499 minus 2400 is 99, and then +1 is 100. Okay, similarly 500 minus 101 is giving us 399, and then +1 is 400. Similarly, for this one, 12,999 minus 12,000 gives us 999, and then +1 gives us 1000. Okay, so if we consider these numbers as a dot b, then basically what we have to specify in range is a comma b minus a plus 1. So this is what we have to specify in the range function. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to do that. Okay, so this is basically representing a, as we discussed. Okay, so now we have to give comma and then b minus a plus 1. Okay, so let me give subtract function for this. We have something called subtract function, and we have to give b minus 1, right? So let me copy this. So let me paste it here, and we have to subtract from the first index, and we have to subtract 0th index from the first index, and then we have to add 1. Okay, so to add 1 we have something called add function. So let me do that, and let me give comma 1. Okay, so it says sub does not accept one argument. Okay, so here I need to remove this bracket and let me give it at the end. Okay, so now we are good. So let's try to run this pipeline till this point. So let me debug this and let's see if it works. So let's wait for the execution. So set variable activity failed. Let me check the error. So it says function sub expects the first parameter to be integer or decimal number. Okay, so let me go ahead again, and here inside subtract it needs the value as an integer. So whatever is coming out of the split is actually giving us as a string. So let me use int function to convert it into integer. Okay, so let me do the same with other integers as well. Okay, because two numbers will be getting subtracted, so both the numbers should be in integer format. So let me do the same here as well in the range function. Let me use int function to convert these values into integer. Okay, and let me click on OK, and let's debug the pipeline and let's see if it works. Let's wait for the pipeline execution. Yeah, so you can see the pipeline execution is completed. So let's check the output. So you can see the array of integer is holding this value for the last row. Okay, so you can see this has been splitted across from starting from 12,000 to, let me scroll it till the end. You can see till 12,999 it has given us the value. Similarly, if we check for other integers, so you can see, so this is for the other records. So you can see starting from 2400 till 2499, this is also fine. Similarly, let's check the other ones. So it starts from 101 till 500 we are expecting. Let's see. Yeah, so we are getting it correctly. Similarly, let's check the other output. Yeah, so this is for the first row. So we are getting from 1 to 10. Okay, so we are good till this point. So now I want to load this data into a table or a file. If I want to copy all these data into file, it will create separate files, or it will override the same file again and again, and it will have only one result. But I want all these results, all these 4 rows to be stored in a table or a file. Okay, so the best way to do this is to use a SQL table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table on the fly. So to do that, either we can use lookup activity, or we can use script activity, or we can use a stored procedure. Okay, so let me go ahead with script activity to do that, so that we will be more familiar with this script activity as well. Okay, so before performing insert into the table, we have to create the table. So I'm using this script activity before this for each. Okay, so let me do that in parallel with lookup, because it does not have any dependency on each other. So let me try to point the linked service to a SQL database. So I already have a linked service pointing to my SQL database. So here we have two options, that is query and non-query. So when should we use query and when should we use non-query? Let's check in the instruction. So it says we can use query when we have to run database statements that return one or more results. Okay, and we can use non-query if we have to create any database object such as tables, or if we have to perform some update, insert, or delete. Okay, so since we do not have to select anything from the database, we need to create the table here. So I'm going ahead with non-query option, and here we need to create the table on the fly if the table does not exist. Okay, so to do that, we have to check if the object ID of the table is null, then only we should create the table. So we have done this multiple times before, so let's do that. So if object underscore id of this table called, suppose, dview.expand range, if this is null, then we need to create the table. So let me give create table script, create table name, okay, expand range. Then let me give the table structure as the first column should be order id and then order units. Okay, so let me give order id, and the data type is int for order id, and order units. So here as the value we have to store is in array format. So let me give an varchar. Let me give as max. So we are good here. We are going to create the table if the table does not exist. Okay, so every time we run this, it will not create the table again and again. If the table exists, it will just skip this create table script. Okay, only on the first run it will create the table. So let me click on OK. And now for each of the iterations, we have to insert the value into this table. Okay, so we have to perform insert statement after this set variable. So basically we have to insert the value coming out of this variable into the table that we have just created. So for doing that, let me use script activity again, because we can perform insert using this script. So let me point to the same linked service, and here in the non-query, as we can perform insert, so let me try to write down insert statement. Okay, so insert into dbo.expand range. Okay, so what we have to insert is, first of all, we have to give order ID coming out of the lookup output, which is basically item.order ID. Okay, so here let me give in string interpolation item dot order ID. Okay, so this is the first column value, and then we will not use item dot order units for this. If we use that, it will write down this value as the column value in the table, but we want the output of set variable to be stored in the column value of order units. Okay, so we have to basically point to the variable. So let me click on this. So you can see this has been selected, and we have to add this string interpolation so that it will treat it as a valid string. Okay, so we are good. Let me click on OK, and I want this to be running in sequential so that there is no overlapping between the set variable values. So now let me click on debug, and let's wait for the pipeline execution to get started. And meanwhile, let me query select star from dbo.expand range. So let's check. Currently this table is not available in my database. So once this is created, so you can see script activity is running. Oh, okay, it failed. It says invalid column name dbo.expand range. So let me check the query once. So here I think double quotes should not be there. We have to provide single quote. So let me remove this and provide single quotes, and let me hit on debug again. So let's wait for this to be completed. Yeah, so you can see script activity has done its job. Let's go to the table and let's check if the table has been created. So you can see one by one all these values are getting generated, and it is storing order ID and order units. Okay, so the table is also created on the fly. So let's check. So let me hit on refresh again. Yeah, so all the set variable activities and insert statements are also completed. Let's check the output now. Yeah, so you can see all the 4 rows has been generated, and it contains the expanded values of the integers starting from the start range till the end range. Okay, so for first row you can see 1 to 10 value is there. For second row 2400 to 2499. Okay, so you can see the end range. Similarly for third one up to 500 the values are there, and similarly for fourth one it starts from 12,000 and it ends at it is not visible here. Let me copy this and let me paste it here, and let me scroll. So you can see till 12,999 the values are there. Okay, so we are good. But this is not what we wanted to achieve. This is just the intermediate stage. So our requirement is to expand each of the values into separate rows. Okay, so to do that, we have to basically flatten this array. Okay, so in order to flatten all these arrays, we have to make use of data flow, because in ADF directly we cannot do that. Basically, we will call the data flow activity inside our ADF pipeline. Okay, so let me try to call data flow activity, and let me connect these two, and here let me create a new data flow. So let me turn on this data flow debug option so that we can preview the data during the creation of data flow. Yeah, so the cluster is ready. So let me add source, and we will point our dataset to this SQL table, and then we will simply flatten all these arrays. Okay, So let me use a dataset that is pointing to my Azure SQL table, and let me point to the table called expand range. Okay, so let me import the schema as well. Yeah, so we have order ID and order units. Okay, so let me preview the data as well. So let's wait. Yeah, so the data is visible. So you can see all these values that we see in order units is actually looking like an array, but it is actually a string value. Okay, so we have stored it in the table as nvarchar and we are pointing to that. So basically it is in a string. We can also validate it by saying this data type as ABC, which is basically string. We can also go to inspect tab, and here you can see the data type of this column is string. Okay, so in order to flatten this, we have to actually convert it into array instead of having it in string value. Okay, so to do that, we will remove these brackets and we will change it to the values like this. Okay, and then once we have this, we will use split function on top of this, so that we will convert each of these values into item of arrays. Okay, so then we will get something like this. Okay, so it will actually convert these values into array form. Okay, so let me use derive column transformation to perform this job, as we have to modify the existing column. So let me select this order unit column, and as we discussed, we have to first remove the brackets. So to do that, let me use replace function. Okay, and we will replace the brackets by empty strings. Okay, so let me select this, and first of all let me remove this left bracket with empty string. We are going to replace it, and similarly we will use another replace function to replace the right bracket with empty strings. Okay, so let me check the output now. Yeah, so you can see the brackets have been removed, and now as we discussed, we can use something called split function. Let me show that. So split function, what it does is it will convert these string values as the item of array. Okay, so it will actually convert the values into array. So let me use this split function, and we have to provide the separator on the basis of which we have to split the data. Okay, so as in our case, we have to split the data based on comma. Okay, so let me give comma here as the separator, and let me hit on refresh. Yeah, so now you can see all these values are converted into actual array, as you can see here in the output as well. The data type is array. Let me hit on save and finish, and let me go to data preview and let me show you the same. Yeah, so now you can see all these order units have been converted from this string value into an actual array. So here you can see the data type as well, and here you can see the values. So each of these integers have been converted into the item of the array. Okay, so we are good now. We are going to flatten this array using flatten transformation. So here let me select this order units, and these columns are fine. Let me go to data preview and let me hit on refresh. So it will convert each of the item of array into separate rows. So you can see the output now. So for order ID 1, we have 10 corresponding rows. Similarly, for order ID 2, we have 100 corresponding rows starting from range 2400 till 100 numbers, that is 2499. Okay, so similarly for all the order IDs, this range has been expanded, but in this output, in data flow output, we can only see up to 100 records. Okay, so we are good with this. We just need to add a sink, and we need to point it to the output file. So let me generate the file in ADLS Gen 2 in the same CSV format. So let me select the existing linked service, and let me select the same container where we have expand range.csv, and here we will give the output name. Let's skip giving the name here. Let me select first row as header. So we will give the output file name here in the settings, because we do not want the file name to be partitioned. So we have to select this output to single file, we have to set the single partition on, and we have to provide the file name here. So let me give the file name as expand range output file .csv. Okay, so now since we have already called this data flow in our pipeline, so we are good. We can run this whole pipeline. But since in the table we already have some data, so we need to truncate this table before loading the data again. So in the script activity itself, I'm just going to add a truncate table script. So let me add truncate table dbo dot expand range. Okay, so this will just truncate the table before the next load. Okay, so let me hit on debug, and let's wait for the pipeline execution to get started. So let me keep on hitting this. So you can see the table has been truncated before the next load. Okay, so the set variable will each time give new values to the variable, and each of those values will be inserted into this table. So let's wait. So you can see 2 values has been inserted. Okay, so 2 records have been expanded. So let's wait. Meanwhile, let me keep on refreshing it. So you can see all the 4 rows has been generated again because we are rerunning this pipeline. Okay, and now we are so now the data flow execution is in progress. So now we are expecting that a new file will be arrived here, and that will be named as expand range output file. So you can see here this has been generated. So let's wait. Yeah, so you can see the file. So let me hit on this preview. So you can see all the values are as expected. So let me download this file and let me show you each of the values, and let's validate if it is coming as expected. Yeah, so you can see for the first row, as we wanted, order ID starts from 1 and it ends at 10. So this is how we are getting the result. Okay, for order ID 2, let me zoom in. So for order ID 2, it starts from 2400 and it ends at 2499. So this was also expected. And for third range, it starts from 101 and it ends at, let me check, it should be 500, right? Yeah, so we are good with the third row as well. And for the fourth row, it starts from 12,000 and it ends at 12,999. So let me scroll till the end and you can see it is as expected. So this is what we wanted to achieve, and we have used a SQL table as well to store the intermediate output. So this was the easiest way to do this. If you do not have SQL database provisioned in your project and you have such a requirement, then do let me know in the comment section. I can think of other way to achieve this directly by using data flow. So let me just do a quick recap of what we have done in the pipeline. Okay, so basically, first of all, we have used this lookup activity that is pointing to our input file. So we are getting all the records which is present in the input. Okay, so we have 4 rows in the input, and then we are iterating through each of these rows, and we are storing each of the row values into a variable. But in the meantime, we are also transforming the data of the input data set, and we are expanding the range present in the input data set, and we are getting an array into this variable. Okay, so we are changing the value from 1.10 to this value. Okay, it is expanding like this 1 2 3 4 till 10. Okay, so this is what is done in set variable activity, and each of those values we are storing it in the SQL table. Okay, so you can see all these values are getting stored here using this script activity. Okay, we are using this inside for each, so one by one it is going to insert into this table. Okay, so once it is inserted into the table, we are using data flow to flatten the data, and we need to convert each of these values into separate rows. So this is what flatten transformation is doing. Okay, so it is flattening the data and it is converting each of the values present in the array into separate rows. Okay, and once it is done, we are loading it into the output file using sync transformation. So this is very easy actually. We just need to think through what can be done in ADF to achieve it. Okay. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you like the content. Please hit on like button and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done it yet. Thank you.